Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast, but we're going to call it Robbie's Special Scenarios because I have one of the closest people to my heart. He's a bladesmith. He's a forger of passion, a forger of fire, a forger of my cold, hard emotion. That sound good?
I love it.
Did I say it like you wrote it?
Man, I'm totally down.
I have a question though, because you mentioned something to me, and I've been literally waiting probably around maybe a week and a half since you told me. What do you mean you slept in the same bed Jimmy Buffett did?
Dude. So, all right, turn this up. Um, and it sounds cooler than it really is. But me and my wife a couple years ago rented this cabin way out in the middle of nowhere. Really dope cabin. And, looking through the book of everybody that stayed, and Jimmy Buffett was on it, signed it and everything. So we went to the head cabin place, whatever it is, and like, oh yeah, the owner and Jimmy Buffett are best friends.
Whoa.
Yeah,
So you slept in the same bed that Jimmy Buffett did.
I had sex in the same bed as Jimmy Buffett.
Even better. Did you feel like you were soaking up any of his power? Like I always
I
feel like,
did.
like when they talk about there's apparently if you look through the Bible, there's like they talk about things that God has touched, like weapons or certain items that are like touched by God. And I'm like, so you soak up the power. Did you feel like you were soaking up anything from the sheets to maybe the mattress pad, anything? Did you feel like you were soaking up anything besides not hopefully not HIV, but something like positive?
I think I got herpes from Jimmy Buffett.
Because look, I think the only cool person I've really ever met besides like maybe cool people to me, like singers or something like of my favorite band. I
Mhm.
smoked weed with Slightly Stupid, which I'll put on my resume when I die or something. But I saved Randy Orton's life one time, like WWE Randy Orton.
All right, go ahead, tell it.
So I worked
Because
at a jet ski place and he was renting a pontoon boat and he was like, he just docked his boat. He was out with his family. He did not look like the Randy Orton you see on like the video games or anything like that. He looked like he had a dad bod and he was, I guess, the off season or something like that. And he just goes, I'm going to do a dive. And he goes to dive off the back of the pontoon boat. And I'm like, don't. He's like, why? And I'm like, watch this. And I just jump right into the water. And I mean, as soon as my feet hit, knees to my chest, it hits me because the water is only like maybe up to your kneecaps. And I was like, you almost went head first into that. And he was like, dude, you just saved my life. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I know you do stunts and all, but you're going to break your friggin' neck if you did that.
that's awesome. Wait, what was the other one? The sloppy seconds.
Slightly Stupid.
Who's that?
Oh my God. See, that's why I said it's only going to be important to me.
Well, no, I know the name, but I can't think who that is.
So I didn't know this until like I guess after like I met them was that so their band they're like everyone knows Sublime. Well, when
Yeah.
Bradley Noel was in high school or no when Bradley Noel was performing at a high school, these two people who created Slightly Stupid, Sublime, he met them and then he signed them onto their record label. So they've been writing music and they have the same tones as Sublime, but
Oh, all right.
they're two wrestling coaches from freaking some high school that they went to. Like they coached the wrestling team there. So imagine that you're wrestling on your team. Like, oh, I'm so nervous. I got to cut weight. And then you got to realize that your coaches are two of the biggest popular stoners in like reggae music.
That's awesome,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's cool.
man. Hey, no, I like those little things, right?
I wish I had something as cool as that. Like, I guess the only thing I have is my last name, for instance, is Robertson, and that's the name of the actual character for Fat Albert. So I'm like, that's all I got. Sorry.
No, well, no. So, all right. So, synchronicity wise, those little things like that. So, man, where there's serial killers in South Carolina. Todd Colehep, and he was just down the road where they caught him. He had some chick chained up in a shipping container and all sorts of things. She just got arrested a couple years ago, and it's kind of like that 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon. The company that I manage and work for, our delivery drivers would take stuff to the facility where this chick was, and they knew him. And it was so weird. Like you could pull him up on our computer, what we've delivered out to him.
See, that's kind of like my buddy, for instance. Back in the day, he used to tell me he was related to Robert E. Lee, but he would never dare to say that now, just with the way society has gone. And
Oh
I'm
yeah.
like, is it bad to like be known or be related to someone or have someone in your life? Like, imagine one day you're like scrolling through your family ancestry and you find out that you're related to Charles Manson. Are you gonna brag about that, or are you going to keep that on the down low? Like, I don't want anybody knowing that my ancestor was Charles Manson, or even like a cousin was Lorena Bobbitt. You know who she is?
Yeah.
Why does everyone know who she is? I'm like the only one that just figured out what her name was.
What? Well, you're young. It was a big thing like before you were born. That
Should
was 30 years ago.
should be a big thing now. Like if there was like a, why don't we have memorials or history museums for psychopaths?
I don't know. Oh, I got one more. So down here, there's this woman, or mid 90s, drove her kids into a lake.
Oh my God, that's the joke about that. The mother
Susan,
got so pissed off because the kids wouldn't shut up, so she took to a trip down by the river. That's what.
sort of. Her name was Susan Smith.
Oh my God.
There's a bunch of documentary stuff about her. So that was the town over from us. And, you never really think about it. My wife owns a salon, pretty upscale, blah, blah, blah. Guy walks in, she cuts his hair a couple of times. He's like, oh yeah, I really got to get in today, get my hair cut. He's like, oh, why? Well, I'm on Dr. Phil tomorrow. It's her husband that, like, and no one knew. She drove his kids into the lake, killed them. She made this big story up that she got carjacked by a black guy. And this is mid 90s South in a very white town in the middle of nowhere. And it was an uproar. I have like some black friends from that town that grew up at that time, and they were all freaked out. They wouldn't leave their house because the gangs were out looking for black men.
That's so scary. Imagine that. Like, I'm always afraid, like when I go to my barber, for instance, like she cuts my hair and she doesn't even ask. And I've been to multiple different ones, so they don't know me. Like, I'm not a regular. I just go in there like maybe once or twice a year or something to get, when I start wearing my hats, when I got to get a haircut because I just refuse to comb it. But I'll walk in. Remember sitting down and she just starts cutting. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I didn't even tell you what I wanted. And then she just starts going. And I'm really good, I like to think, at being able to have a conversation with someone. Like I'm okay. I can manage at least. I'm like pulling teeth here trying to get her to talk to me. Like, hey, what about your kids? Hey, what about no, no, no. She didn't, not a word, just starts snipping and going. And I'm like, well, my hair's gonna be fucked. I know that for a fact.
That's dude, I'm not real good at conversating until I get to know you. But my wife, she's made for that job. She will talk to people she's never met, like she's known them forever. I have no idea how she does it. It's so weird.
Is your phone auto correcting to me when you message me? Because it's you say your wife, but then you have a husband too, or is that just a mess up with the iPhone?
No, I have a wife.
I'm gonna read you this message.
Oh shit.
So this is what she said to me. I have husband work scheduled. Oh, okay. Never mind. Now that I say it out
yeah, I got big boy shit to do.
Okay. What's big boy shit? Isn't a podcast with me? That's big boy shit.
That is big boy shit, but you got to power wash the house and do all your vacation chores. Sucks.
You use your money and you get someone to do that for you.
Yeah, I'm not that much money.
Yeah, you are. You got a blacksmith shop.
Yeah, but you gotta. Plus, I don't mind. I like doing it.
That's a psychopath right there. If you like doing house chores, I like vacuuming though, so I can't complain. Like, I mean, I guess it's because every job I had, like I worked as a housekeeper for so long in a hotel that I actually enjoy. It's just peaceful. You put in headphones and you just let everybody leave you alone.
See, that's the thing. I like cleaning. It makes me feel good. Once it's done, you step back and the house is nice and clean, and it's fantastic.
Would you say you have OCD though? Because like
No.
people tell me I have OCD, and I'm like, I just like shit clean. Like I don't like having a bunch
Yeah.
of dishes in the sink. Like it's like when you're working, for instance, when you're in the forage and you want all your materials out in such random places, or do you like it the way you like it, where it's kind of organized, you know how to get to everything, and you're not having to trip like hoarders. You ever see that show where they make a fucking path from their couch to their refrigerator to the bathroom, and then everything else is just piled up around them? Like, I couldn't do that. I mean, I can throw a bunch of clothes on a chair in my room for sure, but I have to make my bed. I have to do certain things to at least make it look amply nice, I'd say.
Oh, I agree. No, once a week, I have to scour the house. The house has to be cleaned. It just with work, I work 10 hours a day. My wife works 8 hours a day. We're chasing kids. And then I've got the side job trying to get knives out to people. So I take one day a week and everything gets clean.
Do you save your orders for one day a week, or do you do them all like throughout the week? Like, if you get a call or get a special order, you just run to the shop?
I try to do once a week, but like, luckily I'm on vacation. So I've got 4 knives sitting here that for
Jesus.
customers. Oh,
What
yeah.
do you ever like? Do you have to like when you take them home or something like that, or do you leave them at the shop? Like, if you have to mail them out, do you ever get like afraid to get pulled over?
No, no. I'm in the South.
Hang on a second. What is that supposed to mean? If I see a
Oh,
dude with a bunch of knives, I'd be like, this is another Lorena Bobbitt situation.
oh, there's no fucks given down here. Dude, nobody gives a shit. My neighbors never come over. They don't even, nothing bothers anybody down here.
Okay, now here's my possible scenario I was going to say. If you could choose to live in either like the Fred Flintstone time period, you could choose to live in like the Renaissance, or you could choose to live in the Viking Age. What time period would you choose, and why do you think you would survive that well in that time period?
Oh, man. See, all of them have issues. Um, Probably Renaissance.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, we're starting to get medicines and things are changing.
The medicine
I
wasn't good. They chopped the
yeah,
shit out of everything. Have you ever read a book called The Art of Butchery?
no.
It's by this doctor named Dr. Lindsay Fitzharris. I followed her since like when Joe Rogan was on episode 100, so it was like 3 4 years ago. And I keep trying to message and get her on the podcast because she helped me learn a lot more about Victorian surgery. And I didn't know is that the reason why they wear these powdered wigs and stuff was it was to hide syphilis, and
Oh,
somehow
yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
just
No, I've seen that one.
yeah, it just got misconstrued in our head to,
Yeah.
think that means rich. But when syphilis, for instance, your fucking nose fell off, and there was a surgeon back then that was like, I mean, ahead of his time, but he would take your thumb or your big toe and he would sew it where your nose would be. So you'd have like an artificial nose. And it sounds like it would not look good at all, but the dude, the way he did it, it actually looked manageable. Like if you were like staring from a distance, maybe had some bad eyesight, like let's say 20/60, like you're looking at the dude, you could kind of see like that looks like a nose. But there was a famous surgeon, Robert Liston, who is known as I think it's like the fastest hands in the Southwest or something like that. He has a 300% kill rate in one of his surgeries where he killed the patient by chopping off her leg. Because, like we said, the medicine might have been a good for its time, but it was like you chop something off and then you just wait to see if the person dies from infection. But he chopped off this woman's leg. She ended up dying, chopped off his assistant's fingers during the surgery. He ended up dying of infection. And then as he was moving, he sliced an old spectator's coat, and the guy had a heart attack and died. So he was the only one to kill 3 people in one surgery.
Man. See, I don't know, man. I'm so stuck that this is the best time that ever was right now. I don't, I have no wanting, I would go back to the 50s, but I don't really, yeah, man, back then it was rough.
Well, I think
I have no, like, I can't remember, I don't even romanticize it.
I think it's easier back in the 50s compared to where it is now. Maybe in some aspects, like medicine and technology wise, it's greater, but also a lot of the issues that we have come with the technology that we have, these types of things.
Yeah.
And this is like my theory on everything. Like I always look at someone, and I think we've all met at least one person where we look at them and we go, how have you kind of survived in life? Like you don't really seem to have any skills, or it's sad to say, but some people are like extremely
Oh yeah.
sheltered and stuff. But if we're looking at that person like that, then someone like Elon Musk looks at us like that. So I'm like, is Elon Musk really as talented as everyone says? Or maybe if you hear about like the government, for instance, they apparently have technology that's like 50 or 60 years past what we have. So I'm like, maybe they're like, let's get the world on this new Tesla car since it's old shit now. Let's find a scientist, the guy who's been maybe posted in articles a long time ago, and let's make him give a comeback. So they knocked on Elon Musk's door and they're like, hey, here's the plans to the Tesla, and this is going to make you $1 billion something. And he's just the front man for everything.
Man, see, the way I've always looked at like Tesla, he is brilliant. Or Elon's brilliant,
Yeah.
but he's a brilliant manager. He has the perfect people on his team. Hey, we're going to do this electric car. Find me the best batteries. That's your team. How are we going to hook this up? That's your team. It's kind of like in a NASA thing. Everyone has their specialty in the whole thing. It's not just 5 guys sitting around making a rocket. It's hundreds of people and hundreds of different teams. So him managing those teams and telling people, hey, I want a rocket that'll self-land. Figure it out.
Yeah, but see, here's the issue is that even though like the credit goes to him, also the blame goes to him as well too. Like when his rocket crashed and everyone's like, what about all the animals and all the things? Because what happens is when his rocket took off, what they do before takeoff, before rockets, is they have a couple people scavenge the area for little reptiles and little insects and things of
Mm-hmm.
this sort to make sure they cleared out of the blast zone. So you're not going to kill those things. They're not just a casualty of fire or something like that. Well, when this rocket landed and crash landed, it didn't land where it took off. It landed miles and miles and miles away. And it happened to land on, an area that wasn't covered yet. So it killed anything in that area. So he gets the blame for that. And it's like when the iPhone came out, everyone correlates that with Steve Jobs. But then nobody talks about the fact of like, what about the team? Like he's making all these new innovative technology. There's people pitching that. And I would just, that's when you create a killer, is when
Mm-hmm.
you take somebody's idea and you don't give them credit or a little bit of maybe tiny scrap of money, but now this new invention takes off and another dude's getting, just like there's inventions throughout history where someone is like, you might have made the product, but you're not appealing to the public. We're going to get this guy or this person to be the face of the product. And I'm like, fuck, man, if this thing became like a revolutionary device, like the Swiss Army knife, and someone had the face of it, so every time someone thought of that knife, they thought of that guy.
But we all know that guy in our lives. It has such a magnetic personality that you just kind of sit back and awe. How do you do that? How do you go and talk to people like that? How are you? Do people love you that much? That's the same thing. Steve Jobs, brilliant man. Did he invent the iPhone? He probably drew it out, told him what he wanted. And his teams are the ones who invented the iPhone. And he gets the credit.
You made me think of Bill Gates when I was like, is that why they give him the sweater? Just so he seems more appealing, but it's still hard to look past the face.
It is. It, Jeff Bezos, same thing.
See,
You good?
because yeah, I'm trying to think because I want to know what, how, and why. Even if someone's not appealing, are you really worried about the product like so much where you're like, I need a front man with a good face to be able to sell this product? I can see if it's like a TV show, you want to get a good looking person or an appealing person to play a star in a movie. Like you want to get a famous name or a famous face. But when it comes to a product though, like the ShamWow guy, he didn't fucking invent the ShamWow, but they picked him because he just seemed appealing. Get a skinny guy that looks like he's on meth. And then they tossed
Mm-hmm.
it at you. And then you were happy with it until he bit a stripper's tongue off. Or no, a stripper bit his tongue off. Yeah.
he get his tongue bit off? Or she,
Yeah,
I knew it was something with a hooker.
a stripper bit his tongue off, and then he slapped her in the face.
Aw, well,
It's understandable
uh,
at that point. It's like if someone
yeah,
bites your tongue off, you're not going to act like, "Oh, I'm
no,
sorry. Did I go too far?"
no. I think you're right. You need a pitch man. You need a figure. Even in doing this shit, like I have a lot of friends that do knives all over the United States. Some don't sell. They're horrible pitchmen. They can't, and I'm not the best by any means. I have some friends that are amazing at what they do. But there's guys, their gear's fucked up. They don't, they don't take care of themselves. So you're looking at them like, kind of a gross dude, probably lives in a trailer. I'm going to go buy from this guy because he's kind of amusing. I know a lot of guys that sell, and this is their job. This is what they do. They make twice the amount of money I make, but they're the most amusing, awesome dudes you ever met, and their product's not that great.
But see, I think I think differently on it because if I go to a knife convention or something, I don't want to buy from the guy in a nice suit that's pitching me knives with an awesome sales pitch. I want to talk to the guy that has like the amazing beard, has cigarette stains in a jacket or something like that, because I know that person to me seems like the one that's going to have the best knives. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, in Greek
Mm-hmm.
mythology, Hephaestus, in some lore, he's considered big, bulky, buff dude, but in a lot of it, he's considered very ugly. Half of his face is completely melted from working in the forge all day. And like, he's out of shape a little bit, but it's like he's the fucking god of like making weapons and tools and all these good arts, like craft type things. And I'm like, that's when I go to a knife convention. I'm not looking at the sleazy salesman who's going, buy a knife, one knife, two knife, three knives, $2.99. I don't want to buy it from that guy. I want to buy it from the guy who's like, these are my knives. And it's like, okay. And then it's like, it makes me want to, like for you, for instance, you have an appealing look about you. You have the amazing beard, the amazing, mustache and everything. It all fits together well, but you look like you fit your craft perfectly. Like I can just picture you like, putting in some like Metallica or something and just hitting down at the forge, man. And where a lot of people, like for me, I don't like to get my hands super dirty. If I get mud on my hands, I'm like, fuck, but I'm good at like doing other things. Like I'm able to, I can skateboard, I can surf, I can do all these things where I look like I fit that lifestyle. So it makes you wonder if the hobby crafts your look, or do you just pick up the look that fits the craft?
It might be a little bit, at least for me, like, I'm just this guy. This is just how I've always been. Like, a lot of the guys that are really aren't shirt and tie guys when they go to knife shows. They're like Dickies, Jesse James looking guys. And that's what most people are drawn to. You know, they want that Jesse James car looking guy. That's the guy that sells.
It's like when people spend $80 for acid wash jeans because apparently that means you work hard or some shit like that.
Oh, God, I hate this. Those things are
Really? You
so
don't like
terrible.
them? You don't like them when they cut the little holes in them and then they charge the extra
No,
$100?
bro. When I was your age in 91, like that shit was hip. And I didn't like it then either.
I love it because you said that shit was hip, and then he did the whole
It,
like thing. He did the whole pizzazz with the hand too.
yeah, dude, yeah. No, it's just one of the, man, I still am 91, like grunge, still listen to grunge and Slayer and, old school hip hop. And I'm the same guy I was in high school 30 years later.
Now, do you think the music can craft out your personality then? Like, because I know, like, for instance, like I was a hardcore, like I always wore like AC/DC shirts when I was a kid. My dad was in a Kiss tribute band, so I grew up knowing my dad as like the cat. So that was me for a while. And then I ended up picking up 311 music and then picking up Slightly Stupid, Sublime, and then I just changed my whole like look. It just happened. It didn't like I was like, all right,
Mhm.
now I got to change to this. It just kind of crafted out, and I've liked this personality or this style a hell of a lot better. You know, it's like when people turn to country music, sooner or later they're wearing blue jeans, they got a can of dip in their back pocket, and I'm like, does the music find your personality? You find something that resonates with, and then it just changes your taste on clothing, change your taste on food, changes your taste on your lifestyle.
I think so. It depends though. Some people are just like casualty vampires of style. They just fall into whatever's hip, and their style changes. I've been wearing Dickies and flannel shirts since '91. So, if you find something that your heart's in, the music doesn't change all that much. Your style doesn't change. I'll probably be wearing Adidas's and Dickie shorts the rest of my life.
Hmm. Because I'm starting to think like imagine if you fall into something like maybe not so like if you listen to Mr. Rogers music all the time, you're gonna end up wearing a cardigan. Well, if you're involved in Freemasonry all the time, are you gonna end up wearing like cloaks and shit? Like I start to kind of because you were in Freemasonry and I've talked to
Yeah.
someone who's in Freemasonry and he didn't give me all the magical stuff that I thought I was going to get, but I mean, I like that spellcraft stuff. And that's where I see like I come across people that are known as witches or they call themselves like Wiccans or all these types of things on Instagram where I'm like, I roll a little bit. But it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting because they put on like, as soon as someone puts witch in their bio, they take a photo with black eyeliner on and all these things. I'm like, is it possible to be a witch without just adding all that shit onto you? Like, can you just have like a nice Dolly Parton haircut or maybe Nancy Grace? Remember her? She's like the devil.
She is like a devil. Is she still around?
I don't know. She's like all those marijuana cigarettes. I'm like, oh my god. I was watching Hancock and they had her on the TV talking about Hancock. Like, you think you're above the law, buddy? And I'm like, oh, I'm fucking getting anxiety just listening to this.
Dude, she's the best. I used to just watch her and just grit my teeth. It was the best.
I don't know how that's the best. It's kind of like when I watch what's his name? Oh, he's a famous interviewer. Oh, someone called me him at one point. What's his name? You know him. He's got like black curly hair.
Black
Interviews a
curly
lot of
hair.
people.
Stern?
Yes, Howard Stern. I don't like his way he does his interviewing because I know he's trying to get information out, but it's so like disrespectful because he hits on like some very sensitive things. And I could do that for sure, but I don't want to because it's a miserable, like it's interesting for attention. Like it gets the people like, like reality television. You want to see someone get knocked the fuck out when you're watching reality
Mm-hmm.
television. But then that whole like build up, even if it's trying to root out someone's like get a rise out of them, I just don't like that. I consider that disingenuous. Like you're setting them up into a trap.
It's something with Stern though. When he started doing that in the late '80s and early '90s, that no one ever saw it. So it blew everybody's mind. So he now has that following, kind of like the Rush Limbaugh kind of thing, where you have a following of like-minded people that like that. And in the '80s, when it shocked everybody, they had to listen. And there was something in the movie where 50% of the people listen for an hour and 90% listen for 4 hours. And they're like, well, why would somebody listen? Or the people that don't like him listen for 4 hours. Like, why? Because they want to see what he's going to say next.
Do you think people want do you think at least back in the day more people wanted to find out truths or find out shock and then now people are kind of upset by all of the shock? Like we've kind of like I feel like cuz society or at least the way people act, it takes about 5 years of acting that way or 10 years of acting that way before like the ball starts coming in, like you start getting a little bit of money back, like if you invest in a company about 10 years down the line or a couple of years down the line, you start seeing a little bit of income come in and then eventually it all just starts flowing
Mm-hmm.
in. I feel like now everyone's getting all the information that they wanted for so long because we're living, you might say we're living in the best time. In my opinion, I think it's not, but also I think we've seen a lot of shit that 50 or 30 years ago you would have never expected in a million years, like a bunch of political figures to be worshiping a giant site called Bohemian Grove and all this shit. Like that just sounds like if you would have talked to someone in like the 50s about that, they're like, "What? My stars." You're like, "Yeah." But like kids nowadays are now growing up knowing this information, knowing about all these experiments, knowing aliens are real and things of that sort. And I'm like, fuck, I don't know if it was better back then. It kind of seems like once that door opens up, you're like, I can't close the box again.
You can't. Social media is a son of a bitch, man. Like I know we have to have it, but it's the worst. It is so bad. Like, lost my train of thought.
You had a bird in your
Uh,
shop.
oh yeah, you're in the shop today.
I feel
Birds. I got all
comfortable.
sorts of shit in here. What were we saying? Social media, terrible, devil. But I think we're at a turning point of people finding out, and I hate using fake news, but it's such a news is shit. Nobody's telling the full truth. There's nothing that you can learn from the news anymore. At least in the 50s, there was some integrity to journalism. Now it's about who can put out the most ridiculous thing and get as many hits. So I think we're at a turning point of society wants to get back to that, but it has to start with your generation. Once your generation goes, hey, look, this is silly. We need to get back to cottage core and just all doing all these things that meant something and get away from social media.
This is why I asked you the question about what time period you want to live in, because I feel like right now it's just so easy to survive that, like, I've talked to journalists before and they're like, why do you want to be? Because I told them, like, I wanted to be a journalist. That's what I wanted to do when I was a kid. Like, I wanted to be a designer too, where I make shirts. You still got to give me a shirt order. I have a shirt that I'm making right now before this podcast. That's why I was a little bit late, but I'm going to send it to you. I know you're going to like that one. But
dude, I've still got yours that I have to mail out, and I've just been so damn lazy, and I forget about it.
With the journalism thing, for instance, when I wanted to be a journalist, they told me, why would you want to go to school to be like, my journalism degree doesn't mean anything anymore. I'm like, why? They're like, because any person that has access to the internet as a blogger is technically a journalist. And the issue is that you can write whatever you want to write. And with cancel culture starting to have like a pushback to it, people are starting to say, like, I don't give a shit anymore. Like, I'm tired of feeling like I'm walking on eggshells. You're seeing a little bit of like before it was like, all right, anything, whatever you feel, put it up. That's it. It could be misinformation. It doesn't matter. But like, I just got into like a little bit of an argument with someone today where I was talking about the UFC, for instance, MMA. I was telling them, like, the reason, like, the biggest issue when it comes to injuries happens to do with your gloves. It's the equipment that they're using. The gloves are kind of an issue. Like, they're starting to look at bare knuckle boxing and wondering if it was better back then when you could hit someone with your bare fist, because it's the same reason. Like, if I give you steel toe boots compared to flip flops, you're going to kick hard with your foot, sure. But with steel toed boots, you're going to try and fucking hurt the shit out of somebody rather than if you have like flip flops on. Same thing with gloves. When you make them so thick and padded, they protect your hands, but they don't protect the fighter's face. You're really doing more damage. You're making them more of an impact, more of a rock when they get hit. And this guy was like, I took Brazilian jiu-jitsu. You can't tell me. And I'm like, just fucking Google it. It's a fucking thing. It's not like I'm just pulling information out of my ass. But that's the issue with when someone receives some information, then another person receives information from a different thing. Nobody wants to agree on anything. They rather just get to an argument or something. And I'm like, fucking just Google the shit. Like, I can't tell you what's right. I can't tell you what's wrong, but I can tell you the information I've heard, and then you can relate to me the information you have, and we see where it goes from there.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's the same thing with like the vaccine or anything else. They're following whoever they like, and there's a microchip in the vaccine. No, there's not.
That's why Bill Gates White divorced them.
No, there's not. I even know people that, like, grown adults that have told me that. Like, you're out of your mind. That's not true. Or grown adults talking about it, that adrenochrome is a thing, and all these crazy conspiracies. I'm like, no, these study. Go online, find your own thing. Don't listen to Tucker Carlson and that shit show. Just find it for yourself.
Well, see, I made a joke saying that way before the like vaccine even came out, or way before when coronavirus was first starting. I was like, I'm gonna wait 6 months and to see what the vaccine does before I take it, because I'm like, I don't want it to be like I Am Legend. That's how the fucking movie went. And I was joking, and then it started coming out with blood clots and all this stuff. And I'm just like, now they're all ass backwards now. And the reason why I say they're ass backwards is now they have to incentivize you to get it. Like now my state and multiple other states are now paying people to get the vaccine. I'm like, now you're really bringing in the conspiracy people to be like, why the fuck are you paying me now to take it? You should be like, hey, good. Like before it was free donuts. Now you're like, you're going to get $800 if you show proof. And I'm like, oh my God, like that's not fucking good. Cause then eventually that's going to swing the other way where you initially want to pay people. And then now you're forced to get it without getting any money. So I'm like, fucking, when do we like just understand that you're going to have like fires, explosions, people going batshit nuts with beef jerky in the basement?
Hey, if somebody wants to get it or doesn't want to get it, that's on them. I don't give a shit. I got mine. I'm fully vaccinated.
Did you get any side effects?
I did.
Hallucinations?
That was from the acid. That was different.
Hang on a second. Do you have a good acid trip story? Because I love hearing these things.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. I've had psychonauts on here. There's no like recourse for doing acid and talking about it. I've had multiple people come on here and tell me they've seen like all these crazy trips. I'm just like, I'm too much of a sissy to take acid because I know I'm going to be that 1.1% that does not come back from it.
No, you'd probably be fine. If you can handle a high.
I can't handle weed at all.
Oh, then you shouldn't do acid.
I'm that type that like my face goes white. I look like I just got hit in the chest with a baseball and I'm like, and they're like, are you okay? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know.
See, I've always been able to handle a high. So acid, I've seen some cool shit, but there's nothing really life changing. My best acid story is I was out with one of my dudes one night. We're living in Cleveland in this apartment. All my roommates were home and they were doing all the acid. So there was none left because I was out with somebody else. Well, the dude that I was out rolling with has a loudspeaker in his car. Now, this is like 94. And he's got like the lights and all that shit for some reason. Never really asked him. Pull up into the alley right when they're all peaking. Turn on the the lights and this is the police, come out of the house.
Oh my God.
Blah, blah, blah. Finally went in the house and they were all pinned to the wall. They just had no idea what was going on. They all thought that they were being raided by the DEA.
See, this is kind of like I just hallucinations for me. I just don't think I could handle because my imagination's so crazy. Because like I remember hearing the story about this. She did this ultra marathon where she ran like 260 something miles or something like that. It took over like 3 days to be able to complete. It's like this giant Spartan race type thing. And she said by the second day of just nonstop running, she had slept, I think, 45 seconds. But she was hallucinating so bad. She remembered seeing a cheetah, like just a cheetah just sitting there watching her. And I'm like, the reason I like when I get sleep, it's scary because when I sleep, it's like for a very short, brief amount of time, maybe like in a matter of 30 or 40 minutes, but it feels like 10 years. But my dreams are so intense. Like the one I had last night was I woke up and I remember I was in this mansion and I was like, I felt like me. And I start walking. I walked to the bathroom and put some water in my hands. There was no mirror in front of me, so I couldn't see what's going on. And as I'm walking out, I see all these like hot beach models everywhere. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And I never had these types of dreams. And I'm like, what is going on? And then they go, hey, Hugh. And I'm like, Hugh. And so I like run, like try and find a mirror in the house. I look over and I'm fucking Hugh Hefner. And I'm like, what the fuck? And I remember looking at my
Mazel
hands,
tov.
my hands were all fucking old and shit. And I was like, what is going on? But I was like basically walking through the Playboy Mansion. And that's one dream out of like hundreds that I've had that are like, I've had super intense ones, super ones. Like I had a dream I went to like when my great grandfather passed. This was like a year later. I had a dream that like we were at his funeral and everything. And it was like this, I mean, 7 hours it felt like at his ceremony or his like little like wake or whatever. And then I remember they go, all right, well, if you want to go see him, he's out back and like, you know, to bury. And I was like, oh, all right, out back. Okay. I think we're burying a casket. No, he's fucking laying there on a fucking tombstone with his hands crossed. And then I come over, I'm like, oh my God, somebody cover him up. And he's like, what took you so long? I'm like, well, you're fucking alive. Like, it's like, it was I don't know what trying to do a dream analysis on that. I don't like, have you ever had an intense dream like
Mhm.
that?
Oh, I have a lot, but man, that's a great, you know, depending on what circles you run in, you know, that's just ancestor worship. There's your grandfather. It's something that he needed to tell you. You know,
He
it just
did tell
kind of, it's
me.
one of those things.
He told me that there was a bunch of old trophies or something that he had in his I think in his like his back attic or basement, and it was a bunch of old NASCAR trophies. He did NASCAR before it was NASCAR. I never even knew.
To see, there's something that the dead, as they move on, they hold on to sometimes, and hence a lot of ghost sightings are when they say when you're somebody's dying, just let go, move on. So you'll see and to where people have poltergeist, PK entity, uh, just weird hauntings. It's the soul that can't pass on because they couldn't let go of something in their life, whether it was childhood trauma to where you get a PK entity that's throwing things or they're hurting children or things like that. So your grandfather had something he wanted you to have, something he wanted you to know, something that he held on to that he did not let go of as he passed. And it usually
So
takes a
my
year or so before the soul realizes what's going on once it passes that in utero stage of going up.
my theory is if we're all energy and you kind of when if you ever come across like a dead body for instance, or if you ever come across someone who's recently passed, you notice that there's like no energy there. It just seems like there's a piece missing, which we could probably call the soul.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that since the earth is technically energy, that we just residuate back into the earth and it just manifests somehow? Like we end up getting released at one point, like a spirit or something like that? Like, do you think we just return back to the earth a little bit? Like kind of like Gaia myth, but more on the
Yeah.
concept of like if the earth is its own little ball of energy, we can sense it moving. At least the flat earthers like to say, do you feel the earth move? And I'm like, I'm
Uh,
pretty sure if I'm high enough, I can stand outside, I can feel the fucking wind shift me. Like I can
yeah.
feel the rotation.
Yeah. If you were in the center of the earth, yeah, you could feel the earth move. The reason why we're on the outside is because that's what causes gravity. But either way, um, yeah, there's certain with magnetics, electricity, they're in frequency. Everything has it. We have it. We're all on a certain frequency. Everything has its own frequency. Everything has an electrical charge. Everything is controlled by the magnetics of like tides. Same thing. You know, it's just a gravitational magnetic pole. So when is there a god that looks like is a white dude from with blue eyes from Egypt? No, it's a character, something that we have when
It's
you
personification to
yeah. How
a
do you
bigger thing.
explain God or things that happen in the fuckface peasant days? There's lightning. Well, that's a god. Because how do you explain to the fuckface peasant that that's lightning, that's electricity, you know, the whole deal? So there are archetypes. We've built archetypes into gods. And same thing with how do you explain God and creation of man in the soul? Well, it's, we're just nothing but carbon and atoms, and everything around us is made of the same atom. It's just a different configuration. Everything's intertwined. We're all the same as the dirt. Well, you can't explain that to the fuck-faced peasant. Oh, that's God. That's what God is. God created you. It's just all these archetypes of everything you can imagine. Well, how can birds stay in the air? Well, because of God. It's just an easier thing. And we, 3,000 years later, are still using that instead of people going, all right, so our energy is taken, it's out there in the ether, someday it gets put back in. It's just it's all mishmash.
Well,
String theory.
it's kind of like if you notice, like when things, for instance, like so if we talk about energies, for instance, but if we talk about archetypes, so like back in Greek mythology days, they ended up worshiping these gods so much and then ended up hating them and resenting them later down the line when they started to lose belief, that they started to take down all the statues that were built after these things. That's why a lot of the statues we have left, people say it's from thousands and thousands of years of just wear and tear. No, it's from people destroying every single one of them and trying to just get rid of it, unless it was art, like such as like a sculpture of a person. That's why usually they're missing an arm or something that might be from travel, but there's none of these giant monoliths or statues because eventually people were fucking just didn't want them up anymore. They wanted to take them down, kind of narrowing down the thing. Like for instance, now we're probably around 56 or so percentage of the population that just doesn't have a belief in anything. Not on a concept of they don't know what to believe in, but on a concept of like they just don't know. There's just this openness and there's so much culture now where it seems like everybody's got a piece of the same puzzle. But if we go back to the theory of we're all energy that residuates back into the earth, for instance, if the earth is its own energy as well, if you look at Mars has no life on it and the planet looks dead. Maybe we're fueling the earth, but instead of being in a more positive way where the earth can function at a better rate, we've kind of, with all this hate and all this negativity, we've kind of given it this thing where it can still survive, but it's running at like half capacity.
Well, the way, because we've talked about, I went through a bunch of hard years of depression and anxiety. It was what got me out of that was changing my energy from meditation and bringing in a higher frequency and more positive energy that changed my life. People always ask, well, how did you get on TV? How did you get your own shop? How'd you do all these things in your life? How'd you get on a podcast? Well, I manifested it. I brought it to me. This is what I wanted. It's like a chaos magic kind of thing, where you manifest, you send it out into the universe, and it comes back. As long as you have a definite beginning and end point of what you want. Before we talked for the first time, you contacted me. A month earlier, I was talking to a friend of mine with, podcast. There's going to be a podcast thing. We're going to start a podcast, do something's going to be podcasting. And within a month, you contacted me. Started making knives because I wanted to do a different kind of art form. Within a year, I'm on TV. I used to be a fine artist, decided I needed a painting. So I did it in my garage. Within a year, I had my first gallery show. It's just these weird synchronicities that if you put it out there, the universe wants us to be happy. That's plain and simple. If you put out negativity, and some of the most brilliant people I've ever met were drug dealers and thugs, but that's how they live their life. That's what they put out. If they would change that and bring it back, man, they could have been anything. So it's just, I think it's what we manifest. And same thing with the soul. There has to be something. It has, people come back after they get reincarnated, and they come back with a fear of something around their neck their whole life, or a fear of drowning, or a fear of being in enclosed spaces. That is a manifestation from their past life. Maybe they were hung, so they're afraid of neckties. Maybe they drowned in the past life, so they're afraid of water now. It's just these things that we hold on to from past lives. In this life, we have to change it before we can move on.
I don't think I've ever truly gotten the story from you about when you were on. It's forged with fire, right? Or forged in
Yeah,
fire.
forged in fire.
How did that come about? Like, did you will that into? Did you sign up for that, or was that just something that was like invitation in the mail?
You know what? I was brand new. I shouldn't have been on there, but I watched the show, and all these knife makers are just beaten down. I wasn't even on social media, and all these bladesmiths, they would put application after application after application. I just one day just wrote a little email, "Hey, I'd like to be on the show." 3 months later, I was on the show, and they were all pissed that, well, why did you get on it? Like, that's what I do. That's why these wonderful things fall into my lap.
Why do you feel like you weren't ready? Like, do you think now you're ready more compared to where you were before?
Oh yeah. I know so much more now. I was a big pretender when I went on there. I only had a year or so under my belt. I was barely functional. I have a good character. It's kind of like in Pulp Fiction in the beginning when they're sitting in the hallway talking to each other about foot rubs and shit like that.
Yeah.
And they're like, all right, it's time. Let's get in character. And they go do their thing. That's how I have to be because of my social anxiety. But, as long as you have a good character and something of what you're doing, but I would love to go back, and I think I could kill it now.
Do you think that is kind of what shows a lot about a person is like, I know so many people that act a lot and they don't really try and be themselves, or you could tell they're not like what they say they are. And then you eventually see that come out. Like there's just a point where the breaking is, but there are some people that like they go for so long being this thing where they like get imposter syndrome and lose their true self of things. Like, I mean, I just admit that I know nothing, but I've talked to so many people that I always have like an insight or a thought about something. But like from a character point, like even if you can fake it, like they say, fake it till you make it. I'm like, but wouldn't you rather make it and know that you're actually ready for it rather than faking it and then getting there and being like, oh shit, I'm not prepared to do this at all?
I think in some circumstances, because a lot of those guys don't put in the work. They're just really good personalities, so they think they can just fake it without putting in the work. I am not that guy. I have a decent personality, but I obsess to learn the craft of whatever it is I'm doing. If I'm power washing the house, I'll obsess over the best way to do this. How can I make it better? How can I make it faster? That's just the thing in my life. I have to make it better. I have to succeed at what I'm doing. My biggest thing in my life is not worrying about my biggest thing. My worry is that I've disappointed somebody. So I have to make sure that I do it right. I do it fast. I get everything done. Even if I'm at work, I don't want to disappoint the boss with an excuse. I have to do it right, and I have to do it the proper way. Learning how to make knives, same thing. It's just trial and error, but I refuse to give up. I'm very tenacious that way.
Do you think that's probably a good aspect to have, like a good ethic? Like for me, I never, even if I'm sick, I don't miss work. Like I try my hardest not to miss a day. If I'm scheduled, I'm going to show up. But that also means like when I'm not scheduled, I'm using that day for myself. I'm not going to,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a big cover shifts guy. I'm a guy that's going to do my own work and make sure I try not to take on more than I can handle. Like, I feel like
Mm-hmm.
even if I post a podcast episode a day, I still feel like I could be doing more. Like that's part of the
Oh yeah.
reason why I don't sleep is like I feel like I could be designing something, I could be making something, I could be reaching out to a guest, I could be learning a new topic. You know, like a lot of people sit there and say like, how, like I'm 23, but I have a shit ton of information in my head because I'm always constantly trying to learn something new. Like I have binders upon binders of articles and articles and articles, from aliens to the invention of cornflakes to masonry, to so much random shit where I'm like, my brain hasn't hit the limiter yet. You know, a person could obsessed about birds. I'd rather be good at a bunch of different things than be a master at just one thing, even though a lot of people are like, well,
Mhm.
once you find what you're good at, you can master it. I'm like, yeah, but I would rather be manageable, to be able to have a conversation in all aspects. So I'm never feeling like I'm left out or I feel like I know less than someone.
See, that's the way I am too. Like it's you have to. It's that obsession. It's you're going to mess up, but you're obsessed on making it the best. What do you almost 800 shows in now?
Yeah, almost.
Yeah. You it's funny, I'll be putting my headphones in when I go to bed and then I wake up at 3 a.m. with your voice in my ear and it's kind of weird. But it just even in the short time, the 100 shows that we've known each other, the progression is amazing. Like I even email you, I'm like, man, that show with this person, you guys had it on. It was great. Not saying that the old ones were bad. Not saying my old dimes were bad.
I
But it
cringe
gets
at the
so
first
much
couple
better.
episodes.
Yeah, I've not gone back that far in the catalog, but it's just that progression. You manifest that your show is going to be big as Rogan someday. Why not? Why can't it be? What's the difference? You have the same guests, you have the same topics, you have interesting people. It'll get there. You just have to don't give up. Don't give up on the dream. You don't give up making it better, making it the brand strong. It's just one of those things, man.
What about you, for instance, going back on the show again? Do you think like you would take another crack at it, or do you have anything else that you want to do besides like maybe a new knife idea? But like, what do you have in the long run? I don't think we've ever really talked about a knife shop.
No, you know what? As far as the knives, I'm on a good plane right now with not too many orders. The product is getting better and better and better. And this is my weird bucket list. I've pretty much done everything I've wanted up to this point. My next is I want to be in a low budget horror movie.
Human Centipede?
Dude, I would be the middle centipede.
Do you really want
Maybe.
that? You don't want to be the guy that
Yes.
poops in everybody else's mouth?
I'm not opposed to it. I've had worse things in my mouth.
I
Yeah.
don't even want to answer. I don't want to ask that the rest of that. What would you want to be though? Like, cause like for instance, I have a really good movie suggestion I think you would like, was Willy's Wonderland with Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that?
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah. Based on Five Nights at Freddy's.
I think that was an
Sort of.
amazing movie. People are like, that was horrible. And I'm like, you're not really paying. Like the movie concept is good. It's a little bit fast paced when it comes to killing the machines and all that, but I think it has some potential to it. I'm like, that's a film I'd like to be in, something like that. I mean, you get to basically accomplish the goal of being in a horror film, or do you want to be like one of those like movies that gets talked about, like A Lady in the Water or The Happening? That's if the world
Nah.
continues on bad energy, it's going to be The Happening where it just kills everybody.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking more like Cabin in the Woods.
That's a good movie.
That's a great movie. And like I'm just there's like a few things like pop culturally wise, huge punk and metalhead, huge hip hop head, huge horror fan. Like that has been my whole life. And I've done the band thing, I've done the music thing, I've done these little things. But man, my final thing is I want to be in a horror movie. I want to be like the weed smoking guy that just does puns the whole time and makes it at least 3/4 of the way.
Dude, I'm telling you, if you have you thought about reaching out to like some cosplayers and trying to think like, because here's the thing with you is that you can do a mashup where you can make a cosplay blade, or you can make something that's probably not going to use real metal but might have some similar parts to it.
Mhm.
Then you just reach out to some of these horror people, guy. I mean, I've talked to a few horror directors. I'm pretty sure I can get you on an audio drama show like that, but I don't know about an actual on-screen film one. That's going to be a little bit more difficult.
Oh, do you know what? I check. I'm in like one of the actor guild kind of like, backstage kind of things where shit comes up. And there's always horror movies in this area that are being shot, but I don't even know where to begin. So I need like, you got to hook me up with somebody that knows the world so I can get my part in the next horror movie.
So what your next move would be to look up the hashtag horror, and then you would have to look at a bunch of like pages or horror directing, for instance. I can reach out to some people too that might have like, little side skits. I'd have to look for something in your area unless you're willing to travel too. But I think that'd be a good, dude. I could totally picture you in a horror film. The stoner thing, maybe, but I picture you more like you wouldn't have like a lot of lines to say. You would say something wisecrack so smart in the instance where everyone immediately gets hooked to your character. Like, I like
I
this
just want to be
fucking
this
guy.
guy.
Yeah.
What's up?
Yeah.
And just keep, the one liner comes out frame.
Is that pump 7 you're on? And just fucking walks away. It's like, what? Where did he go?
You want to go in the shed with the chainsaws?
I picture you like dodgeball, where he's like, I don't like to drink my own urine, but it's sterile and I like the taste.
See, that's what I'm saying. I just want that. That would be my swan song, would be being in a horror movie.
Do you
So
feel,
someday.
do you feel like you want it so much to where you're trying to manifest it?
Oh yeah. Not because I'm so busy right now, but that's one of those on my manifestation list. Right now, my focus on manifesting is getting the knife blacksmithing thing to where I can almost make a career. So that's where a lot of my focus and energy is.
How much do you typically make? Or not how much do you typically make? How many orders do you typically do? Like, let's say, since maybe like the start of this year.
Probably one or two things a month, but that's mostly because I work so much. Right now, I've got 3 things on the bench going out. So it just it kind of ebbs and flows. But I've probably sold over Christmas. I sold 25 knives, which helped pay for new equipment. Everything goes back into the shop. So I'm totally in the black right now. Everything I make is totally either for the shop or goes in the bank.
You need to get into the horror community. Be like, I'll make you a knife. And they're like, but I want to actually chop somebody's head off. You're like, look, I can't be attached to this. If I'm going to engrave my name into it, I don't want to be on the murder weapon.
You know what? That's funny. I had a bike club that I made a knife for one of the guys. And he's like, yeah, I think all of the guys really want something. I'm like, I don't think. I just made this for you. I don't want a bunch of 1% bikers having my knives. I don't want to be part of that. Somebody's going to get stabbed.
It's kind of like making a deal with the devil. It's like, we're going to make your knives famous. And then it turns out it's like you get one of those cases like Lorena Bobbitt where your knife was used.
Dude, man, I'd feel bad about it, maybe. Or I'd be the guy on like CNN. Yeah, that was mine. That was mine.
Didn't
cut his head right off.
It sliced like butter, and that's just your pitch. And it's like, well, I don't know. When someone's eating someone, do you want that to happen with your knife? It's like, hey, man, to each is their own. I just make the knives and sell them. What they do with them, that's up to them.
Oh, I'd have to go into total redneck mode as far as character. Well, I don't know what happened. She cut the dick off. You can't say that on CNN.
You can say whatever you want. With all the shit they talk, you can say whatever you want. That's a good movie pitch idea, though. Imagine it's like a story about a blacksmith and you're selling knives to like all these things, and somehow a serial killer is using your brand of knives, but every time he orders them, it's another person that picks them up. It's always a different person. So you think you're making multiple sales, and then you end up finding out that this serial killer is specifically using your knives, and it turns out he's someone that you went to school with that you got had an issue with, and then boom, it just evolves from there. Kind of like
There
Billy
you go.
Madison, where the dude stripes off Billy's name and lipstick, scratches it off, puts the lipstick on. He's like, "Thank God I called that guy."
Dude, it's on. I would just have to do the screenplay. We already got the bring your dad in. He can dress like Ace Frehley and
He just
awesome.
like Peter Criss, man.
Oh, Peter Criss, that's right.
It was the cat.
Yeah, wait, who's?
Ace Frehley was Spaceman.
Oh, that's right.
Best laugh in the business.
Yeah, he was the other guitar player,
Yeah.
right?
Can you
Or did-
believe that they wouldn't get radio time because of the way they looked?
Well, it was the 70s.
That's so fucking weird to me.
You know, it's kind of like Manson. You know, when Marilyn Manson first came out, it was the same kind of thing.
Yeah, now he's being Me Too'd. And I'm like, how are you going to Me Too Marilyn Manson? Look at the way he looks. Like, you already know he's going to be into some weird shit.
See, I've had this conversation where they're like, because I'm a big, huge Manson fan. I love Manson. I love his most all of his work. And that was, what do you think about that? Like, well, you know who you're getting in a relationship with. That's not a facade. He is that guy. You know, he does drugs. He's totally open to whatever in his life. It's you're getting a you're not going to change him. It's not going to be doilies and a nice house in the suburbs. You're getting into a relationship with Marilyn Manson. How can you dox that guy? He has been nothing but honest with his lifestyle.
It's kind of like, who's the singer for Judas Priest?
Oh, Rob Halford.
Rob Halford. No, everyone thought he was just metal, and it turns out he was gay, and he was dressing up in SMM outfits. It's like, I don't know. Sometimes you miss all the signs. I don't know. He had a whips and chains and stuff, but people thought that was metal. It's like, it's kind of like David Bowie, for instance, was like a lot. If you really look at the 80s and 90s, there's a lot of gay 80s and 90s rock stars where it's like a lot of people didn't even know, like, and they're shocked by it. I'm like, but look how they acted and look how they dressed. Like, that's, I don't know how that got stereotyped to be metal. Metal, I consider more like Tenacious D. Like, they're the best representation. Their song Tenacious D has the metal. That fucking song, I don't care if you make fun of it because it's Jack Black playing it. It's good as shit.
Oh, Jack Black was top notch in that. You know, I've always liked Jack Black. I think his newer stuff is too kiddie stuff, but you know, like Tropic Thunder. Come on. But like Rob Halford being gay. Funny thing about the metal community, nobody really knew nor cared. And when he did come out, everybody's like, "Oh, okay, he's Rob Halford. He's the god of metal." You know, he has just as big a career now as he did then.
It's kind of like, I've talked about this story with Jim Brewer where he talked about how, like, one of his friends or people that he knew went like a little bit brain dead and went into a coma, and then when he came out of it, he couldn't use his legs, so he was just miserable. And his wife remembered coming home and seeing him like in front of a TV watching Metallica, and he goes, "I want to go to that." And then he went to one of these Metallica concerts, and what they call the Metallica family, when all these people would come over and treat you like family, they push him up to the front of the lines, and he was having such a positive effect by it that like the doctors had him in for another scan or something like that, and they saw parts of his brain were regenerating, and they don't think it's the music that was being played, they think it was the community aspect of it. And I'm like, it really shows you, like, you know, they talk about even though I've met some of these guys, and I think it's because of my age that they were really cool, but like the guardian angel people, the fucking biker dudes, they were really nice to me because I was young when I met them. But if I met them now, it would probably be a different story. But like they're very, very like they look thug, they look hardcore, even though they're not super strong. They're just tough ass people, but
Mhm.
they're really nice people trying to do something to protect other people. And I'm like, that's kind of like with metal, for instance, or that's with people that look like have tattoos all over their face. They're probably the nicest fucking people. They deter all the negative and all the bad and fake energies, and they get their real people in front of them, which I think is why they do that.
Oh yeah, the metal community is the best. Like you had punk rock, you have issues. Even some hip hop, there's issues, but for the most part, metalheads are, they have no one else but their own community because people do look at them like they're bikers or thugs or something else, and they're really just nerds. That's simple and plain. They're obsessed with metal. Who has the best battle vest? Who's seen Slayer the most? It's just a part of the community. It's fantastic.
How you started naming off all these, like, I guess what you'd call hardcore things. I was like, I had a bowl of nails or whatever without any milk. That SpongeBob episode. I was like, oh shit, oh shit.
Even biker clothes, man, they're great dudes. They just, as long as everything's cool, everything's cool. They have an agenda, but they don't want to go out and be mean to anybody. They're just protecting their own.
I prefer if more people, like, a lot of people say, like, I'm not mean, I just speak what's on my mind. And I'm like, well, your fucking mind's pretty horrible if that's what it is. But I prefer people to be more authentic rather than just be like fake. Like, the people that go, okay, yep, that was nice seeing you too. Even though you don't want to say that, you want to say go for, like, I'm like, if you keep letting that door open for them to be like engage in that conversation or something, just tell them like, hey man, I'm sorry, I just don't feel like talking, or I don't want to talk to you. I'd rather that, because like that's what you get in a community of people like you can actually connect with, is when there was like no bullshit. When I'm shooting pool or doing something at a bar, like a couple of years ago, I would go and I got really into pool and I would play pool, and there'd be people that would be like around the bar scenario and stuff. You just see all these fights and all these interactions where someone disagrees over something, and it's like, are you guys really friends? Or are you guys like just fucking, well, we work together? It's like, it doesn't mean you need to go and have a beer together. It just means like you need to, like, when I sit and play pool and I'm sitting there making a shot, if I can play pool with somebody and there's no horrible interaction, nobody gets mad if we're not betting or something. I'm like, fucking, it's like that with anything. You get in a community with the people that you can really connect with. But
Mm-hmm.
so much of that now is like, do you actually connect with these people, or are they just like, it's kind of for the look of it? You know what I mean? Like social media wise, we take a picture together and post it so everyone sees it.
I think that's true. I make sure, like, because I've got very few people in my immediate circle that I allow in. But even at work, most people tell me when I first met you, I thought you were an asshole. Well, yeah, yeah. As soon as I meet somebody, I'm taking you out of your comfort zone. I'll say something absolutely off the wall that you may consider misogynist or racist or just downright ugly, to see how your reaction is. Now, if I make me being a Polish American, if I make a Polak joke and you go, yeah, fuck them Polacks, now I know where you stand. You know, so I try to pull them out. I want to make you comfortable in this world. See how you react. You say something that is against women, even though I made some joke about giving women shoes, and I only do that just to see where people stand. And that's how my clique becomes tighter, because they are all in the same mindset, to where, all right, we now know where he stands. That's not his way, but as soon as somebody gives me, yeah, fuck women, like, all right, I'm with you now. I know where you stand. You're out. You're not in the clique. Or if somebody says something racial and means it, you're out. You're not part of this. So I get it all the time, though. Man, you're an asshole. I didn't think I'd like you. Like, yeah, good. Good. Now we can start fresh.
I think the best example of that will be like, how many times do you see videos of rappers and a bunch of people like, yeah, man, saying what the person agrees with? And it's like, do you guys really agree with what he's saying? Or are you just hanging out with them because of how popular that person is?
Oh yeah. See, I get that a lot, and it's kind of sad because with me being an old school hip hop head, it was more kind of old hip hop used to be more like the metal community, to where it wasn't about the money, it was about the art form. It wasn't about clicks, it wasn't about diamonds, it was just about the art. And the community now, just I still love it, but I don't like where it's going. The art or the artistry is gone.
Yeah. It's probably the one thing I really enjoy about, can't believe I'm blanking on his name again. Bill Gates. He wears the same fucking sweater and he does all this stuff and I'm like, I get it because like he's not gonna go all fancy and try and buy like I got so mad at Conor McGregor when he showed off his like $1 million watch and I'm like, why the
Mm.
fuck do you need that? Because it looks and people like the way like, oh, he's got money. It's like a show off thing and I'm like, man, I'm fine with a flannel no matter what money I have, and if money's gonna change that thought of that and make it so like, oh no, you need to wear the freshest clothes, the nicest stuff, then I don't know necessarily if I want that much money, because when that starts to change me as a person, it's very, very hard to let that or to revert that change. I watched my cousin, he almost married into wealth. Like they were doing $50,000 like plane flights, like they had a private jet and shit to go eat dinner, like a $50,000 dinner. I'm like, what are you buying for $50,000? And it's like he would send pictures, and it's like that's not $50,000 worth of food. That's fucking nothing. That's like you're eating at Ruth Chris. You eat at Ruth Chris Steakhouse because it's the idea of eating at Ruth Chris Steakhouse. It's supposed to be fancy, but I'm like, I can spend $40 on a small little steak, or I could spend that $40 on groceries for a week. Like, I don't want my mind to change in any way. And if money or fame is going to change or manipulate your mind because you get used to a stature of living, I'd say, I don't know if I want that stature of living. I'm more than happy being at like the normal base level of things rather than, I mean, it would be nice to have $1 billion, but would that change my personality? Would that make me more of an asshole? Would that make me some type of like false person? I lose myself along the way. It's a big kind of, I understand it, but you see with child stars, nobody prepares you for that type of fame. Nobody
Mm.
prepares you for that situation. Even when you're an adult, there's no roadmap for it. It's fucking so contaminating and so like there's the redemption of or the truth about Britney Spears on Hulu, the documentary where it shows her father using her for so much shit. And it's like, no wonder she's fucked up. It's so hard because people will manipulate you, say things that you want to hear. You'll see people come out of the woodwork that you would never have heard from if you didn't get this one thing that they're jealous of about you. And they want to suck off that little bit of fame. And I'm like, is it better to just be surrounded by no one, or is it better to be surrounded by people that really don't give a shit about you? It's a fucking weird, like, who's who of where do I go? How do I do this? And how do I live?
Oh, I agree 100%. It's, and I've had conversations like people like, well, I want to live in this house, this big house. I want to have this money. I want to live on the lake. Like, man, I got no interest in money. My bills are paid. I live within my means. We have everything that we want, but it's 1,500 square feet of content. I don't want a lot of money. I don't want to be able to, if my knife thing went off the ground enough to where I could quit my job, all right, cool. But I don't want all those headaches and grabber-ons. And like you see, like Conor McGregor, when he first came out, he was a fighter, man. He had no money. You loved him. Next thing you know, he's got the guy Richie suits on, his $1 million watch. He's got a whole crew that's backing him, and he's throwing trash cans at buses. You're not a fighter anymore. You're a thug. That's not the person I signed on for. At any time, even if I had $1 million, I keep everything street level, because at any moment I could be poor as hell. I could be on the streets. I don't want to forget what that's like. I don't want to forget about eating hot dogs and ramen in Bush Light every day and living in a house with 5 dudes and how shitty that is. You know, I've dug my way up, but I do not in any way want to have this beautiful house and have it all taken away. Live at ground level, live about to my means, and that's it. I'm absolutely, and if I did win $1 million, I'd move out in the middle of nowhere and not have any interactions with anybody. I'd be fine with that.
I think I just want enough to where I can pay the bill to survive rather than have to try and pay the unquenchable bill of greed. Because once that unquenchable bill of greed comes in, you're kind of screwed over. You're lost in so many ways.
It's terrible. I know in the South, and I'm sure up by, because you're on the ocean, you have a lot of highfalutin shit.
$2,000 a month for the cheapest place down here.
Ridiculous. But even down south, they're blue bloods. So we have a lot of old Southern slave money. So you have a lot of guys in their Jaguar and their Maseratis that don't have to do for anything because they have old school family money. And they have no skills. They have nothing interesting in their lives. Man, it makes no sense to me why you'd want to live like that.
It's kind of like we were talking about before when the spirit passes on. It's kind of like there are some people walking around that just seem like husks.
Yeah. You know, it's kind of like when somebody dies at 27, the 27 curse with the musicians that all died and shit like that. You know, you're put on this earth to learn. And there's a point where you've learned absolutely everything you can, or what you're put here to learn. You know, how many people do you know or have heard of that had they're beautiful people and they were at the prime of their life and they've learned and they're just about to make something beautiful and they die all of a sudden? That is basically why you're here. You're here to learn. And when you've learned everything you're supposed to in this life, you move on. That's just that chaos in the universe. Is it just putting everything right again?
Couldn't agree with you more, man. I mean, we've been talking for almost an hour and a half, man. I know you got dad shit to do. Husband shit. I'm sorry. Husband shit. Can't believe when I said it out loud, I was like, all right, that makes more sense. You said it before, and I was like, what does that mean? What does he mean by husband shit?
I'm not opposed to having a husband.
Probably get along better.
Probably would.
I've thought about it so many times. I'm like, I don't like having a roommate that's a dude is so much probably easier than just trying to, because there's always that, like, we got to include the romance instead of just having a beer or something. I don't know. Maybe that's just the relationships I've been in.
I don't know. No, it's like me and my wife been together 30 years since we were teenagers. And it's, you know, if I was gay, at least I'd have somebody to go fishing with and drink beer out on the front lawn.
I'm not getting into this discussion, Aaron. We're not doing that at the end. We can't do it.
Oh, come on.
No. Aaron, where can people find you at, man? What's your Instagram where people can look at some of your knives?
Noble Savage Forge, noblesavageforge.com. I'm out of Spartanburg, South Carolina. So anytime anybody's in the area, I do get some classes once in a while. So you can always get hold of me.
I'll make sure I link it in the description. And thanks for listening to this episode of Out of the Blank Podcast.